everybody. Today we're here with Echo. She is an astrologer, reality adjuster, and esoteric herbalist. We are going we are going to be talking about Chiron, specifically just about Chiron in general in this video, and then tomorrow we will be talking about Chiron in Aries, which is where it is right now. So yeah, and it'll be there a little while, but you know, there's some things coming up. Chiron's return here in the US, other shit that should be, you know, discussed. So I guess if you want to start out by how do you, when you teach, because you do teach,
I do.
how do you kind of teach Chiron, and like how do you view Chiron, and how do you work with Chiron? How would you do that?
Oh man. Well, natally in my natal chart, it is in the 10th house, very, very close to Jupiter. So I've never not worked with Chiron, even before I was an astrologer or knew anything about astrology. It's just always been very much in the forefront of my life. But when I teach this particular comet, because Chiron's actually known more specifically as a comet, usually we start with the astronomy of it, of any planetary body, really, and then sort of just kind of go into the mythology. And then we talk about, I really like to really remind everyone that Chiron specifically is ruled by two mutable signs, which is Sagittarius and Virgo. And specifically, when we have any kind of planetary body that's ruled by mutable signs, it's really optional whether or not we engage with it, which is the ability. So you'll see, especially with a lot of Chironic themes, people who don't want to face some of these more intense, very traumatic results of tons and tons of generations and like compacted. What's a good way to put it? The link between Saturn and Uranus, which is Chiron's orbit. The essential, the Rainbow Bridge, I think, is the name of the cornerstone book on Chiron. So the orbit really goes between Saturn, which is time, which is earthly time, the consequences of our actions over, a certain amount of years, and Uranus, which is the essential all-knowingness, the truth, the harsh truth, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. So it's really facing the consequences of the actions of generations past, and then also those things that are shaping the kinds of wounding that we have to work through in our own lives. So the inherent mutability of both Sagittarius and Virgo there is just, some people will never ever engage with their Chironic wounding. They're just never gonna want to look at it or really think about it because it's painful, right? It's not fun. We want to be over here with Venus and like Jupiter and like, have all this nice fun times, and life is hard enough as it is, right? But kind of the point of Chiron that I really like to start with is that, it's not even all astrologers even use it. So that's really kind of
I mean, to each their own, but that one kind of baffles me a little bit. I'm like, like, but there's so much here that is not there because we're not acknowledging it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But again, each their own.
I mean, I think it's really what you want to get out of astrological data and like what answers you're looking for. I mean, there's room for everybody in all kinds of traditions. Like not everybody uses Pluto or the outer planets past Saturn. Mm-hmm. But not everybody uses like fixed stars, I think, are really popular right now. So like all of the data, the incredible amount of data that is held within the stars for us is just kind of filtered down through whatever things you want to look at. And that message is repeated, pretty consistently, no matter what you end up using. But I mean, again, it's just real close to my Jupiter. It's all up in my midheaven. So I've always been very drawn to Chironic energies and aspects. And it makes me super fun at parties, let me tell you. Tell me about your trauma. Come on. At least that's the Gen Z humor. So like, I feel like I'm in an appropriate time. But how do you interact with Chiron and in your readings and in your personal experience?
Well, I personally, I've got Chiron in Gemini in the seventh house. So it's fucked with my one-on-one relationships most of my life, in some capacity. I know that it can manifest a lot of different ways. For me, it tends to I have issues with feeling like I am heard by the people, and specifically people in close one-on-one relationships. It's like in one ear, out the other. And that could also have to do with who I'm choosing. Maybe I shouldn't choose shitty people that don't listen to me, but yeah, maybe, but that is or maybe that's what I'm supposed to do so that I can learn that it doesn't really matter if I'm heard by somebody else in the first place. Maybe, there could be more of a purpose to that, but that's where it is in my chart. It opposes Venus and it squares the nodes. It also opposes Uranus. So it's difficult.
Yeah, damn, but very powerful when you kind of take that key glyph and unlock the actual lesson of self-identity and all that fun stuff, right?
Yeah, that's been a lifelong thing, and I suspect it will.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mine is in Cancer. Believe you me, I am everybody's mom, and nobody says thank you. And I've had to be like, oh, I don't have to be everybody's mom all the time. In fact, when everybody wants that, fuck, who am I? It's your natural inclination, right? So,
in a way,
I don't know.
That's interesting you say that. Like, I find that I naturally can kind of play therapist. It kind of can happen quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Mercury in Scorpio, it can tend to kind of go that way. Yep. And not everybody wants that either.
Or
so yeah. But
yeah, it's a very foreign concept to me to not want to interact with these themes. So I just assume that everybody just kind of does. Like, hey, do you want to talk about the worst thing that's ever happened to you? Me too. What have you learned from it? Like, let's talk about death.
I could talk about that too.
Yeah, see, this is why it works. But like the inherent mutability of that is just so very obvious when we see, because every individual makes up, their own little piece of the fabric of our society, if you want. And we really see a lot of these themes reflected through the generational aspects of, this group had Chiron in Cancer, this group had Chiron in Gemini, and then, kind of moving through that, there's a very specific scientist who has Chiron in Aquarius who is very anti-astrology, and I just think it's hilarious because he's just like, you realize you're just saying all of the things. Like, you have a superiority complex, and you're telling on your it's hard to watch. But the mythology of Chiron I find really fascinating as well. And the inner planets really, I don't think necessarily benefit. Our personal planets really don't benefit as much from the Greco-Roman mythology that is assigned to them, like through their names. But when it comes to the asteroids and the outer planets, I really, really do believe that we get a lot of information and can contextualize it a lot better. So those of us watching who aren't really familiar with the mythology, Chiron is the son of Zeus and a water nymph whose name is escaping me because I don't want to mispronounce it. So I think my brain just didn't learn it. But Zeus is also known as Jupiter, obviously. So he was cheating on his wife like he was known to do, and she was in the middle of catching them in the act, so he turned into a horse and sort of galloped away. That story continues with some other stuff that happens that's weird, but it's Greek mythology. So but Chiron was born as half horse and half human as a result. But the thing about Chiron specifically that I don't think is really talked about too much is the fact that he's not a centaur in the typical sense because of where he comes from, right? He's half a horse, but usually in the art of that time, he's depicted with like human legs and feet. So he just has like a full man body and then just an extra horse in the back. And he was really gentle and he's really kind and he was half immortal, like you do. And, he taught all of these enormous figures in, the pantheon of Grecian mythology. And he is just kind of known as being a centaur, but centaurs, like kind of by nature in that world, are just really violent and just crude and awful. And most of the time, impolite is a very kind way of saying that, for sure. But they're just not really creatures you want to be around. So when his mother gave birth to a horse-like figure, she was just like, oh, fuck no, absolutely not. I'm out. She left swiped, and he was raised by, I think, Apollo and Athena. And that's kind of where he got his status and his stature. But that whole time, that complex of being abandoned really stuck with him. And then at the end of his life, because he was immortal, he was struck with a poison arrow, like full of hydro blood, I think. And so he was kind of thrust into this unending loop of being immortal, so he couldn't die, but hydro blood will fucking kill you. Yeah. So he was having a ton of like visceral reactions, just all of this pain. And the only solution to kind of taking him out of that really intense, painful cycle was the same self-abandonment of his immortality that his mother did when he was born. So he gave up his godliness and helped save Prometheus, because that's a whole nother backstory. And he was able to finally die and be put up to the stars. So a long-winded explanation of Chiron, but the themes of like self-abandonment and removing yourself from the identity that causes you pain throughout your life, and specifically through your lineage, is really, in my personal opinion, what we can gain quite a lot of gnosis from the mythology there.
Let me ask you something. When working with Chiron, because do you think it can be healed? Do you think that wound can actually be healed? Or do you think that's the point? I ask because I've played around with this, like, because saying that it can't be healed sounds so futile, right? Like,
yeah, no, I think a lot of pop astrology is what I call like the shorthand buzzword kind of Canva post of like it's incredibly nuanced ideals, just like condensed for views, and then never really expanded upon. So being known as like the wounded healer gives a very like victim mentality, when like Chiron wasn't a victim necessarily. He just had, this part of himself that he didn't ask for. He was just given, he was born, and he did everything he could with it, and he was able to really lift up a good portion of others' lives, and then having to sort of remove himself from the thing that helped so many other people, but also caused him so much pain. So I think maybe the question isn't whether that chironic wound can be healed, because I don't think it's actually a wound. I think it's a portion of our identity that is not something that we need to identify with anymore. And it's an opportunity to kind of see where we're causing pain for ourselves and others, especially through our lineage, through generations. And I personally think it's really interlinked with like generational trauma.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And, the big thing that really we as humans do just kind of in general over time is, the way we identify in groups and decide whether or not to abandon people based off of certain characteristics. So it really trickles down from like a huge societal level of like, how are we abandoning people who simply don't look like us, and how it trickles down into like the individual level of like, how am I abandoning myself in favor of upholding this identity that maybe isn't really mine, or maybe really isn't something that I asked for. I think we see that a lot with like just kind of pinpointing mine in Cancer, right? The intense need to be hyper feminine, especially with it so close to Jupiter. We had a huge boom in the early 90s of like this hyper feminization as a result of like the 90s of grunge era and like you know, the swing always comes back. So we had like breast implants and like this huge literally figure explosiveness of a very female body part, and that was ingrained into an entire generation of folks that were born when I was born, and we all sort of just saw this as like, this is what femininity is, and like all of the things that come from, you know, something seemingly so simple as that. Like, do I have to be everybody's mom? No, no one asked me for that. I don't have to have enormous perfect tits. I don't have to like you know, not like, I don't have to be a mother at all. Like, I never have to bear children if I don't want to. But these are all sort of the things that are highlighted about whatever identity you were born into that you really are tasked, in my opinion, with releasing during your lifetime. So I don't have to have a perfect female figure. I don't have to be mothering. I don't have to be sensitive. I don't have to be caring, kind, empathetic. Some of those things I probably should be if I want to be a kind person in life and not be a total dick to everybody. But you know, that's kind of the process of you know, where do you feel inadequate? Where do you feel like you don't fit in, and why? Like, really, why? Is it something that we need, or can we all just sort of live without that? You know, so.
I like that approach.
I don't know if that I don't know if that was helpful, but
no, I like that approach. I like taking that approach. That's I think that's good. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, in readings, I see it a lot, especially if it's interacting with the generational planet. You know that there's like a big heaping task for the native. And especially now that we have this like second boom of spirituality, people are really into unpacking their generational trauma and like unweaving all of these stories that have just kind of cemented themselves like in our physiological like DNA. Like, you store generational trauma in your body.
Absolutely.
So you know, another key to kind of unlocking that is like looking at your Saturn placement. That's really where I start the kind of unpacking of some of these chironic transits, and then like looking at your Pluto, which is that like death, decay, psychological terror of the unknown, like far out past everybody else. And those two planets really together really inform and enrich how we can work with these chironic energies. And instead of just identifying with the fact that you're always in pain because of whatever you're tasked with, kind of seeing that as a flag and a direction of, oh, I should investigate this, which is really hard. It's not an easy task, which is why it's mutable. Right? Some people just won't.
Yes. Some people, yes. And
and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I jokingly kind of raised my hand earlier when we were talking about people like, you know, that don't want to deal with it. I don't really want to deal with it, if I'm honest, but you know, but somehow it's like a flag. It keeps being waved in your face. And it's, and while I can ignore a lot of things, it's very hard to ignore a constant, like, hello, you know?
Yeah. Well, and like a lot of times you'll see, you know, some people will just either completely reorient their personality around avoiding that thing.
Yeah.
And they just like miss out on a ton of life that they could, you know, really be interacting with, but it's completely up to you. Right. So, yeah, I mean, there's certainly been times when I've wanted to ignore that and just kind of like, no, I can do the thing. Man, everybody else can't do it, but I can do it. I can. And you can't. It never works. It's something that, you know, nobody can actually achieve. So the mutability is very helpful when we start working with these chironic themes, because it can be really exhausting and really overwhelming. So sometimes you do need to turn it off. right? You can't just like always be self-improving and like staring your pain
Yeah.
in the face 24/7.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, you do have to take breaks from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a Pluto in Scorpio generation, that is certainly something that we have to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Like rest, like chill for a second. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really wonderful things, in my opinion, that Chiron can offer personally.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, it's not just pain. It's not just like, ooh, it's your deepest wounding. I know all your secrets now. Because like
No,
Chiron, it takes a while to go through a sign.
it does. Yes, it is. Yes, it's, even though it's not a planet like you were saying, it is it's generational. It'll be there. How long does it stay in a sign usually? Do you know off the top of your head?
Between 2.5 and 9 years. So it has a really elliptical orbit because it goes between two outer planets. And when it comes into contact with Jupiter specifically, it it shifts with the gravitational pulls and all of that. So the shortest time periods are between I think Leo and Libra, Leo and Scorpio. There's between 4 and 2.5 years there. And then Aries and Pisces are the big 9-year ones. And that 9 years includes like the retrogrades back and forth, because those energies have to blend, right? I mean, specifically the energies between Pisces and Aries, that is such a definitive birth, truly. Of
we're kind of in right now, even not with Chiron, but with the sun, 29 Pisces today, and it'll be moving into Aries. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh, where does the time go?
But yes, it is a very definitive. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think the best way that I've sort of started to understand Chiron in Aries, in the retrogrades back through Pisces, and then like fully being in Aries, is like the first few minutes when you wake up in the morning and your eyes are kind of bleary and like you're unfocused, you can't really figure out who you are or where you are. It's like, oh fuck, am I still a human? All right, fine. I'll do another day, I guess. But like when we, expand upon that to cultural shifts and, big wounding that is happening over generations, and kind of alchemizing that, you really don't get to just go from Pisces to Aries, because that is not a shift that's simple or kind to really anybody.
No, it's not.
No. It's like we're born and we start screaming pretty much immediately. So
yes, that is true. Most of us do.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of that's my little Chiron bit. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think since you started talking about Aries, I think we'll stop this one here.
Sure.
And we'll start the next one about Chiron specifically in Aries.
Sure. I didn't even notice the time. Sorry. I end up going off on really long.
I'm so glad that you do this. This was fun to watch. It was fun for me to watch you talk about this. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And for everybody watching, tune in tomorrow, and I will have the second part of this up. All right. Well, I will see you all later.
Bye.
Bye.